Welcome to Upskill Your Parenting, a parent video series put on by Cultivate Mankato. Today, our topic on this video is going to be school readiness for literacy development. Some articles that I took the information from and different resources is listed here on this page, raisingchildren.net and raisingreaders.org. And then I'm going to take reference from Gold Objectives for Development and Learning from Teaching Strategies as a reference of where kids should be for their school readiness skills and going into kindergarten. Let's talk a little bit about literacy development, what it is and how does it help us. Literacy is the foundation for reading, writing, communicating, and socializing. Early literacy is learning about sounds, words, and language. Before children can learn to read or write, they need to develop the building blocks for literacy. Those building blocks are the ability to speak, listen, understand, watch, and draw. The early phase before children are conventional readers is called early literacy phase. And I think this is really important to point out is because for literacy, the development of it, a lot of times what we think of is reading. And for children, they will learn to read soon enough. But what we want to make sure is we really put emphasis on this stage of development in the early literacy phase. Before they learn to read, there are so many things they need to have as a foundation. Otherwise, when they start to read or get maybe pushed into reading a little bit before these are laid out well, then we're going to be missing some things as they continue to try to become the best readers they can. Focusing on talking, having conversations, singing, and even coloring will help your child work through literacy development to become successful readers. When we talk about literacy skills, what are we talking about? So I'm going to go through, again, these are all referenced through the Gold Objectives, and we'll kind of give you some examples as we go through each kind of the areas in that literacy development. First one demonstrates phonological awareness. What does that mean? You've probably heard the term phonological awareness. That means rhyme. So which things rhyme. Alliteration, that would be what is the beginning sound or how sounds are broke up in a word, and then syllables. And that would be how many chunks are kind of in a word as you say them. Demonstrates knowledge of print and its uses. So uses and appreciates books and understands print concept. Some ideas or specifics on this one would be that they know how to hold a book, turn the pages. Do they know where the pictures are compared to the words? Do they understand that words are what you're reading? And maybe even how it gets tracked across the page and that you go left to right and top to bottom. Those are print concepts. Demonstrates knowledge of the alphabet, letter names and letter sounds. Yes, before going into kindergarten, they can start to learn these, but it's definitely not something that we want to push too much. So within our program and early childhood programs, we are going to be talking about letters and numbers. And first of all, we just want to make sure that we know the difference between the two and understanding that before we move on to sounds and trying to put sounds together. We just have to start with the basics and letter names and letter sounds. Often you will find this and first focusing on a child's name, just because that is something that is interest to the child and a good foundation to start with, rather than pouring out 26 different letters to them. They might start with that. And of course, exposure is wonderful, even into the toddler age, but what to focus on is more of this is a letter, this is a number, things like that, but they might not be able to recognize that when they look at it in that earlier stages, but with a lot of exposure, starting in those older toddler age, things like that, into older preschool, that's how they're going to learn over time. Some other notes as far as the letter names and letter sounds going into kindergarten at that point, a good foundation for that is being able to know maybe half of the alphabet and the letter names. If they know all of the letter names in the alphabet, they're doing well. When we talk about letter sounds, if they're kind of starting to recognize again a lot, specifically in their name, but I think just really putting the stress on the letter names is a good start. And at least if they know that they make sounds, maybe they don't know the exact sound, but if they're understanding that that's a letter and then connecting a sound, even if it might not be the right sound, that's a good step because they're at least knowing that part. Comprehends and responds to books and other texts. Under this, we would talk about interact during read alouds and book conversations, uses emergent reading skills, and retell stories. So as you're reading a story, are you talking about it? Are they really engaged with it? Are they asking questions? Are you having conversation about it and understanding that? And then emergent reading skills would be some of those where we're talking about basics of that, how it goes, how the print moves across the page, up and down, things like that. Demonstrates emergent reading or writing skills. So writes names and writes to convey meaning. So again, the focus on the writing could be on their name. So if they are able to write their name, that's a great start. They also, if you go back to my video on language development and that one, I don't remember what the other one was. It's underneath language. I know that for sure. We talk a little bit about the writing and how that, sorry, it was fine motor. There we go. And how that progresses. So there's going to be different ways that same with how they write is going to progress, not just according to their fine motor, but also what's going on with them in their literacy development. So you're going to start to see them maybe just kind of starting to put some lines on the paper. Then before you know it, they're maybe doing a few chunks of formations, we're just going to call them because they might not look like anything, together. And they're going to say, what word is this? Or how do you spell this? You're going to start to hear more questions like that. And that's showing that that writing and that emergent writing skill is coming into play. And then you're going to see them maybe start to put some, actually making the letters look like letters. And then they're going to start to maybe put them next to each other. But again, they're not making the connection with the sound and really trying to spell them out. They just know that writing letters put together is conveying a meaning. And so they might just write something out and say, here, I wrote you a letter, because they think they just wrote something out and here it gives meaning to it. So those are some examples of kind of the overall literacy skills and the different areas of those. So what can you do to help with your child's literacy development? You can support early literacy development by communicating with children, reading and playing with rhyme. So again, a really big thing is reading from the time they're young, communicating, talking about the things that you're doing, all of that. Children develop and learn best through everyday fun activities like singing, talking, and games. Singing, anything that is in kind of a sing-song tune, melody, kind of a rhyme. If you've noticed, haven't noticed with your child already, that's going to grab their attention. And maybe your child's coming home from school with a lot of singing the songs, but maybe not really telling you about what they've learned, but they sure can sing a song when they get back. So that's their natural way to learn, is when things are through song. Use naturally, oh, sorry, of course, the one in bold, read. So this is something that is very much stressed. This is how children are going to hear language and develop that, and then also develop their literacy development as well. Use naturally occurring opportunities throughout the day and in your environment to work on literacy skills. So again, we really want to work on that skill through games and opportunity. As you're driving around, you see a sign, and what does that mean? Or looking at a box of crackers or whatever it be, and can you find the letters? Yep, that's a letter. Can you find a number? Yep, that's a number. Or maybe even we're on to the next where they know the difference between a letter and number. And now we're learning, we're going to pick out the letters in their name. So you're going to give them each letter of their name, and they need to try to find that on the box. So there's a couple different ideas, again, just how to naturally use opportunity throughout the day to work on that. Play games with letters and pictures on it. This supports visual discrimination. Tell stories and create stories. It's really fun. If this is not something you've tried with your child, please do. And it's a great way also to, if you're trying to incorporate eating together or sitting down to eat, really fun to sit down and just tell a story, or especially at bedtime. You guys could, instead of having a book to read, you could tell a story together or make up a story. You could start it and then they could add to it, or you could start it and then they have to give the ending, things like that. And then make sure your child sees their name every day, whether it's seeing it on their backpack and they have to pick it out, or at school, they're finding their name and things like that. And hopefully that is something that you're already seeing in the classroom and then picking that out. But it's very important, even at home, another way to support it. You writing out their name is also very important for them to see the writing as well. So let's talk about a few specific skills or specific ideas you could do to build this developmental area. Make a game of guessing what letters things start with. Provide opportunity for writing through drawing and scribbling. So again, please remember that as you are practicing that writing in that early emergent writing development, they're not going to be able to do it right away, especially because what conjoins with that or is correlation to it is their fine motor skills. So it's really tough where you might feel like I'm trying to build literacy skills, but if the fine motor isn't progressed enough, then you might actually be hampering that as well. So just be really careful with that and not to push it too much. So it might just end up with them scribbling, and that's okay. Maybe you're just focusing on their pencil grip or making shapes or swirls or curves or things like that. So do not feel like you need to go and teach handwriting. Really what we focus on in a philosophy of ours is working on strokes. So instead of learning a specific letter and saying this is the letter we need to make and we need to form, we're going to talk about let's form circles. So we're going to practice lots of circles. We're going to practice slashes or dashes, things like that, swirls and waves. So those types of things. So if they know how to write a stroke and to do lines and to do circles and things like that, or curves, then when they go to learn a letter in kindergarten, they're already going to have that motion and they're just going to put it together a lot easier. So just a little bit on the writing and how much to. Now, when we talk about their name, that is something that would be good for you to work a little bit harder on when we actually talk about letter formations. And that's just good for them to know when they go into kindergarten. And I really highly encourage you find out what font your school that your child will be going to is using and to teach them in that font. And also making sure that they are doing a capital letter at the beginning and a lowercase the rest. So just some little tips on that. Emphasize the different parts of words or different letters to help your child understand that words can be broken into segments. So you can start to break down words and even in their name or funny words that come up with, or let's talk about different words. I'm trying to think of one right off the top of my head that would be fun. So let's just talk about what is a multi-word? Swing, outside, bicycle. There we go. I got one. Let's do bicycle. So you can start to break it up into syllables. Bicycle. And then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, it's like popsicle. And then they've just rhymed it. So just trying to break down words and talk about it would really be helpful to look at some of those different parts of literacy development there. Repeat mispronounced words with the correct pronunciation. For example, if your child says Paschetti and misses the S at the beginning, then you could just respond by saying, yes, we're having spaghetti for dinner. So you don't necessarily need to force them to say it because they might not be able to, and that's probably why they missed it. But by you continuing to say the word the wrong way, like they do, then they're not learning that it actually shouldn't be said that way. So making sure that you just repeat it in a sentence, saying it the right word, maybe even stressing that S a little bit or whatever they missed. Encourage your child to hold the book and turn the pages. So that's going to help them with their emergent reading skills. This helps your child start to understand that the book should be a certain way up and that pages are always turned in the same direction, etc. Some more ideas. Slide your finger underneath the words as you read them, pointing out each word. You could ask, where should I start reading? So again, if you feel like your child's at that point, you could ask them where to read. And do you know what letter this is? Or do you notice any letters on the page? Or can you find the letter L that your name starts with? Things like that. Ask your child open-ended questions about the story. For example, what do you think is going to happen next? Or what would you do if this was you? So then we're even incorporating some emotional literacy into that as well. If you're talking about how would you feel about her, what would you do, or how do you think that makes them feel? Another example, play games that involve rhyming. For example, cat, pat, and mat. You can play them at any time in the car, while shopping, or at dinner. So just throw out a word and start with cat. Can you think of something that rhymes? If your child is just new to learning rhyming, they're not going to understand at first. So you're going to have to do a lot of the rhyming. But if you keep playing that game, they're eventually going to get it. Play games that involve the sound and rhythm of words. You could try tongue twisters like she sells seashells by the seashore. So finding some games that start with it, tongue twisters, then they're going to start to notice that. Especially you could talk about words that you notice sound the same. I do that often with kids. We might say a word like sandwich. We're having a sandwich. Oh, that sounds just like Sam's name. Listen, am, sandwich. So that's the alliteration that we talked about earlier. So we're helping them realize that that sound, there's a sound just at the beginning, and that there's other words that just have that sound at the beginning too. So even if you just kind of start to work on sounds that are at the beginning and kind of separating them, that would be good as they continue into kindergarten while they're even breaking down more of those words and those sounds. So hopefully those are some good ideas for you to get going with literacy. And again, all of this is found on the wonderful world of Google, where we can all become experts on a lot of things. So feel free to, if you want to do some more research on this, to do that and find some really cool tongue twisters, games, or rhymes. Get YouTube or Spotify music list going with a lot of fun songs for the kids to sing in the car and to do. So